Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. All right, friends, welcome back. Jeff Roberts, glad to have you back in the studio. Let's talk today about some advice you may be able to give. With 27 years of practicing law, let's talk to people who may be considering going to law school, or if you're a parent, you might have a child who's thinking about going into the practice of law, and maybe some perspectives and some advice you might be able to offer as an attorney.
Sure. It's good to see you again, Jim. I have been practicing for 27 years, and as one of my previous podcast, we had my daughter on who was going through law school at that time. In fact, just recently graduated from law school. So now I have a perspective on law school again, a little newer perspective on law school again now from that. But law school is, and I told her before she started law school that one thing that law school will teach you is how to be a workaholic. Yeah,
I would think so. Just the grind of this practice.
Well, and that is, I mean, nearly every attorney, successful attorney, works substantially longer than a normal work week. But I think that's also true of most people who own a small business.
I can tell you from personal experience. Right,
yeah, I don't think that part of it is just being a lawyer. You have to work a lot of hours. It's just any type of small business, you're going to be working a lot of hours if you own the business. The aspect of law school versus practicing law is significantly different than what I thought it was going to be going to law school. Law school is really good at teaching you the basic concepts of law. Some gives you a good overview. You do constitutional law, you do personal injury or tort law, contracts, property. You cover the entire gambit in law school from that standpoint to give you that broad spectrum background which every lawyer needs to have from there. But law school, at least from my perspective, as a general rule, does not teach you how to practice law.
I've heard that from so many of your colleagues, that it is, as you say, the basics, but then there's the art of actual practicing law, and that's substantially different. Once you get out, it's like anybody getting out into the real world.
It is to some extent like others, but I mean, when I was in law school, I clerked one summer with a federal judge, and I clerked worked for a prosecutor up in Illinois, where I went to law school at.
Because you went up to Carbondale, right?
Yeah, SAU Carbondale is where I went to law school, and I clerked for a prosecutor up there, state's attorney, and that allowed me to have some experience. In fact, they had a program there set up, and I was able to actually try a criminal trial all by myself. It was not to a jury, it was to a judge, and they had that program set up to allow law students to be able to do that. But really drafting motions and things of that nature, at least where I went to law school and others I talked to were the same way, you're not taught that. You're taught how to write essay answers for final exams, but actually drafting a motion, in drafting briefs and things, you're kind of taught a little bit, but taking depositions of a witness, not really covered much in when I was in school. There were some trial practice classes, but really didn't go into a great deal of detail about that. So while you got a great background of what the law is, which you need to have, you didn't get the practice side of it. And one thing I've not been a forceful advocate for this, but one thing that I've told others when I've talked to them is I think we would probably be better off as a profession if we went away from the bar exam and went more to like the doctors have as far as doing rotations or actually, after getting the basics, having some sort of
like a residency or something.
residency mentorship type thing, where you're actually doing hands-on, in that being part of the curriculum of the law school or aspect of becoming a lawyer, because the bar exam is to make sure that everybody that does practice law has the basic concepts of that they need to know to be a lawyer. But frankly, you shouldn't be graduating an accredited law school without that to start with.
Right.
From that standpoint, so having that other process, I think, would actually better suit the public, because when I passed the bar exam, personally, back in '92, when I passed that bar exam, the way Kentucky is, Kentucky does not certify specialties at all. So the day after I was sworn in, I could handle a capital murder case if it come into my in my office with absolutely no experience whatsoever in that field. Or well, I had some experience in prosecuting because of from law school, but no attorney the day after they're sworn in should be solely responsible for a capital murder case or a multi-million-dollar product liability case. It just shouldn't occur from that standpoint.
It's a question of experience.
It's a question of experience and having the skill to do that type of work. But Kentucky basically says, here, you got your license, go do whatever you want to do in any field you want to do it in. And I kind of understand that, but by the same token, and they expect that a new attorney would say, okay, I need a more experienced attorney on this type of case to help me out from that, but there's no requirement of that. And I think having a requirement or a mentorship program where they can have an attorney that's more experienced kind of assist is a good thing. If you go into work for a law firm, or for even if it's a small firm, you have another attorney that you can rely upon, which is what I ultimately did myself from that. But there's no requirement of that, so you can hang your shingle out and start doing whatever you want to do, and that can come back to hurt the attorney and also their clients. So.
Oh, I would think so. Just you're making mistakes you're not aware of,
right?
Just because again, it comes back to the experience. And
yes.
Hey, you are my guinea pig today. So, which is never a pleasant situation.
Yes.
So, chronologically, I mean, if somebody's thinking about going to law school, they're going to sit for the LSAT, which is kind of like the law school SATs. They get a score there, and that helps determine, among other factors, what school they can get into.
Right, law school admissions test, yes.
Right, and then you go through 3 years, primarily, of law school. Then you pass the bar, ideally. Great. And then after that, then you're licensed to practice, and you may go on from there with other concentrations.
Exactly, yeah. You've got to graduate from college, get a bachelor's degree from college, and at least when I went to law school, and I think it is still the same, your bachelor's degree does not have to be pre-law. It does not have to be any kind of a law background from the bachelor's degree standpoint. In fact, one of the gentlemen I went to law school with's bachelor's degree was in aeronautics engineering, and so which is about as far away from practice of law in law school as anything. And he come to law school and actually done very well, still in the Carbondale area, the last I heard. But so you can go from college, and there's several people who decided to go to law school when that wasn't really what they thought they were going to do when they first entered college. Law school is, if you take a full load and go through the program as a full-time student, it is a 3-year program degree there. You graduate with a Juris Doctorate degree when you graduate from law school, and then as you mentioned, you have to take the bar exam. Actually, you've got to take, and there's several parts to the bar exam. There's an ethics portion that you take, and they've changed that now from when I practiced, because when I took it, that was taken at the same time as the bar exam. 3 days, I believe, is what it was, or 3 or 4 days. But one part of it was taking the ethics, and then the multi-state, and then the essays, and all of that. Now you can actually take the ethics portion while you're still in law school, before you graduate law school, which is what my daughter did. She passed that back in her second, when she was a 2L,
Wow.
second year of law school, which I think a lot of her classmates took it at that point in time. And then you take the bar exam, which has the essay portion and a multi-state portion. In a lot of states, you're now going to, at least on the what's called the multi-state portion of it, or a uniform bar exam, or UBE, and which I think is actually a good thing to some extent, because that allows, you can take that portion here in Kentucky, and if you decide, well, I want to also be licensed in Tennessee, if you've taken the uniform bar exam in Kentucky, then those scores would transfer to Tennessee if Tennessee also uses the uniform bar exam. I don't know if they do or not. I know Florida does. So those scores would transfer there, so you would just have to take the Tennessee part of the bar exam there, or if you're coming to Kentucky, you'd have to take the Kentucky bar, because every state has their own laws in regard to certain things, so it's making sure you're aware of what the laws for that specific state are as well, and that helps. I think that's going to, Kentucky just, matter of fact, I think this year is the first year they're participating as in the UBE, the uniform bar exam, from that perspective. So, but that was a change they just recently made, and I was kind of glad to see them make that change, so that if from a personal standpoint, if my daughter decides she wants to practice somewhere besides Kentucky, or at least be licensed somewhere besides Kentucky, it will at least assist her in doing that, and she won't have to go take a 3-day bar exam somewhere else. She can just take that state's portion of it. So.
Okay. Well, let's transition a little bit. Now, assuming, obviously in 92 you went to law school, or did you graduate in 92?
Graduated in May of 92, took
Okay.
the bar exam in July of 92, and was sworn in October of 92.
So talk to us about some of the biggest surprises. I mean, I would think when somebody is assuming, hey, I'm gonna become an attorney, and my life is going to be like this, and my day-to-day is going to be like this, what were some of the things that maybe early on, and then maybe a few things later, that you realized, wow, I didn't really realize that, or I wish I'd have known, kind of things?
Well, the biggest thing is, when I came into practicing law, I kind of assumed from going to law school, I would know, they were teaching me what to do to be a lawyer, and then I soon found out they didn't teach me anything about drafting motions and all of those things, or very little about that. And but I had a good mentor that I was working with who trained me and helped to train me in that regard, and let me was really good about looking over anything I did and providing constructive criticism instead of just criticism of what I was doing from that standpoint. And talking, one of the things that I think that is difficult when you first come out of law school, and can maintain to be difficult for other people, is, especially in what I do for a living, which is representing people who've been injured or who are disabled, is I'm having conversations with folks who are having some of the worst times of their life, and having those conversations when you're not used to having those conversations. And I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist by any sense of that word, but I'm talking to people a lot who are going through some very, very difficult times, and helping them through those times is part of what I'm supposed to do, and what I am doing. And so that was one of the biggest shocks early on. It's something I've done thousands of times at this point, but when I first started talking with someone who has suffered a life changing injury, and trying to reassure them and talk to them about their expectations. That was very difficult, because when people come in, managing expectations is something that we have to do.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of people think, well, this is a $1 million case. I mean, it's got to be.
Everybody's case, well, I won't say that, but
Right.
a lot of people have come into my office
We're self-editing.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes their brain says, "Don't go there." But yeah, I've had a lot of people come into my office who have unreal expectations about the value of their claim, and when you see something on TV, you get an unreal expectation about that. Everybody talks about the McDonald's coffee case,
right.
And people talk like it was last month that occurred, when it was, I think, probably close to 2 decades now since that verdict came down. But it was such an anomaly, and it was reported, and it stuck in people's minds. Now, and if people heard the true facts of that case that justified that verdict, that they would think differently about that. But all anybody heard was a lady spilled coffee on herself and got $2 million, and so they come in and say, I'm burned a whole lot worse than coffee would burn me, not realizing what that lady's injuries really were, and so my case is worth more than $2 million. And it'd be a workers' compensation claim in Kentucky, and you're never going to get that kind of money in a workers' compensation claim in Kentucky, because the damages are limited by the statute on exactly the most that you can get per week and how long you can receive those benefits. So, having those conversations with clients and managing those expectations is something that you have to learn to do. And sometimes frankly, I've lost clients or potential clients over that, because I've told them, if you think this is a $2 million case, I can tell you right now, it's a Kentucky workers' compensation case. You're 45 years old. You're never getting $2 million or $1 million under Kentucky workers' compensation law. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And they may go to somebody else who will say yes, even though it's never actually going to occur, and then they deal with it. That attorney deals with it later on. I prefer to let the client know right at that very first meeting, if they have those. And I can't tell anybody at the first meeting what the value of their claim is, because I don't have the medical records or anything else. But I can tell them it's not this astronomical number that you think it is, if they have that viewpoint from there. And then, inevitably we have, I have to deal with clients at times whose first cousin's child's ex-boyfriend's husband
saw something on Maury Povich, and
had an injury, and all they had was a hangnail, and they got $100,000.
Right.
And so that person's attorney who lives out in Las Vegas, attorney told them this, and so you have to deal with that, because people are everybody has a cousin who's talked to an attorney at one time and then think they
know the law,
know what the law is, and then so you have to deal with it. Those are things that really I didn't, and I don't know why I didn't kind of think about some of that stuff about from there, but I didn't expect to sometimes have a client question me on what the law was. Early on I could see that. But, when I first started practicing, the gentleman I practiced with initially had 20 plus years of experience, and I sat in with him when he was interviewing clients for the first meetings and all, and they were questioning him on stuff that he's been handling for 20 years, and I'm sitting here thinking, why would you question the person you're going to for advice? Why would you question the advice that they're giving you from that
Happens every day.
standpoint? So,
Happens
yes.
every day. That's unfortunate. Sometimes you got to unlearn some things or deal with some expectations, like you said,
Yeah,
unreasonable.
and I encourage when I'm talking to
Yeah.
clients to make sure everybody's understanding. When I'm talking to clients, I encourage them to ask me questions to make sure they're understanding everything, to make sure I'm understanding everything. But when I say, if I tell somebody under Kentucky law, the most you can get a week for work related injury is your total disability rate, which is this amount. Then questioning me on that or saying, well, so and so in Las Vegas says it's different, and I say, and they may be correct on what the law is in Nevada, but we're talking about Kentucky law.
Yep.
So that's what kind of surprised me to face that to some extent, but it is that's part of it, and then the stress of practicing law didn't really surprise me a great deal because, frankly, we start managing that heavily in law school because law school is extremely, extremely stressful. And the workload didn't surprise me because law school teaches you to be a workaholic, as I said. But the deadlines and things there are, I knew there were statute of limitations that you have a certain time frame to file, and managing that is fine from there. But some courts are extremely sticklers on things that probably shouldn't be, in my opinion, and make it much more stressful and more difficult to practice law than what it ought to be in some regards.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
in having deadlines are needed. There are procrastinators in the legal field just like there are in any other field from that standpoint, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease is kind of true. The deadline that's approaching the quickest gets addressed first, and things of that nature. I do a lot of workers' compensation cases, and if somebody files a motion, I have 10 days to respond to that
Right.
motion.
Regardless of what's already on your plate.
Regardless of what's already on my plate, regardless of whether I'm on vacation, and I'm a solo practitioner, so if I've got a vacation scheduled, I'm leaving on Friday, and I'm not going to be back in till a week later on the Monday. A week later, then I'm going to be back into the office, and a motion comes in that Friday. Even after if I leave at noon on Friday, and it comes into the office afternoon on Friday, it's still 10 days for me to do that response. So, and so those type of things are, and some judges would say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and let it in. But if you do it repeatedly, it affects your reputation in practicing law from that standpoint. A lot of the defense attorneys, if in that situation, if I emailed them or called them up and said, look, I'm heading on vacation. You agree that I don't have to respond to this for 15 days instead of the 10 days. 90% of them are going to say that's fine from that standpoint. But some deadlines, like especially for appeals and things of that nature, if you don't comply with that deadline, then that appeal gets dismissed.
Right.
And then my client gets hurt from that standpoint. I didn't have it. It was not my case. But I know of a situation where, because we use electronic filing now in Kentucky, and whenever one side files an appeal, the opposing party has a deadline to file a cross appeal. Then, even if normally in a workers' comp claim you have 30 days to file an appeal to the workers' compensation board. But if the other side files, if I win the case on everything but one little issue that I'm really not going to appeal on, but then the other side files their appeal on the 30th day, I have 10 days to file a cross appeal on that one issue that I wasn't going to appeal on. But since they are, I might as well go ahead and have the board address the issue as well. And I know of one situation where the attorney, one attorney did not get notice because the electronic system didn't do what it was supposed to do, and they didn't get notice of the appeal being filed by the other side in a timely fashion, and in fact didn't know about it until the time to file a cross appeal had already expired. When they found out, they filed a cross appeal, and and unfortunately the court said, "Too bad.
Too bad.
The fact you didn't know about it doesn't matter. Somehow we're supposed to be psychic and know they do things, and from that standpoint." So.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a few minutes left here. Let's kind of talk about the day-to-day practice. And again, you have an injury practice. You're a solo.
Correct.
So, you've got staff here and they can help out, but you're the only attorney in the firm. And based on that, your view may be different from somebody that's going to work for a larger firm somewhere in a big city or something like that.
Certainly.
But the day-to-day for you, kind of give us an idea of what that's like.
It varies, to be honest with you.
Which can be exciting.
Yeah, it can be exciting, and that makes, in addition to my private practice, doing injury practice, I am also an assistant county attorney, and I do child neglect and child abuse cases in family court for the county attorney's office. That's all I do. So, Mondays I'm in court doing those at least till noon, sometimes later on Mondays, doing those cases and dealing with those issues during the rest of the week as well. That's just the day they're heard in court is on Mondays, Monday mornings. From there, and I may be in court on one of my civil cases. Pretty much any time during the week I could be in court on a civil case. Now we're doing it by Zoom, so I just have to go to my conference room, get my, normally I do it in my conference room anyway. I can do it from my office in the back as well, but I usually go to my conference room so I can spread out on my conference room table with the files, and I can do the court, do court from there over the video conferencing. And I meet with clients pretty much every day. I'm going to have some either in person or phone conference with clients, and then drafting documents and correcting documents, depositions and all of that. It's just there is no one typical day from that standpoint. And, a few weeks ago we talked about this in a different podcast. A few weeks ago I had an oral argument in a case, and so I was in for Saturday and Sunday. Preparing for that oral argument, because it's just...
And that was for the Kentucky Supreme Court, actually.
Correct, yeah. It's an oral argument at the Kentucky Supreme Court. And it's, whenever unless I'm in a hearing or if I'm meeting with a client, my staff won't come in and bother me when I'm meeting with a client unless I ask them to come in for some reason, but they won't come into the meeting with the client. They won't come in when I'm on a hearing. Even if I'm sitting here in the conference room doing the hearing by video conference, they will not come in to the room where I'm at and interrupt that in any regard. But if I'm working on briefs or any other type of pleading or documents or anything of that nature, if they got a question over something, they will come in. And so it's just a lot of times it's easier to work after they've gone home. A couple hours, hour and a half, 2 hours after they've gone home, or come in on the weekends when I've got to do something that I want to maintain my focus and concentration for a long period of time.
And that brings us back to one of your earlier points about how long the average day or work week for an attorney can be. I mean, it could get extended because even though you're based here in Calloway County, you can handle cases all across the Commonwealth. I mean, so depending on there may be travel involved, there may be all sorts of different things, and trying to arrange schedules on different time zones. It really can string out the day a little bit.
It can. That's I've handled workers' compensation claims up in the northern Kentucky area. A friend of mine, family member of a friend of mine, and they asked if I would represent them in the case, and so I represented the individual in the case, and we had, and I've represented other people up in that area on various other types of cases, but we had the final hearing. It was pre-COVID and pre-video conference hearings, and we had the final hearing in Covington, Kentucky, and
a little bit of a haul from here.
It was a long haul for me to drive up there. And the way it worked out, I drove up the night before or the day before. My client and I spent a couple hours that evening preparing for it. Next day, get up, go to the hearing site. We have the hearing, and then it's probably 2.5 hours for that hearing, and then drive back home for here, and that's just that's part of it of what I do, and I like traveling, so that's one
Sure,
of it
sure.
doesn't really bother me to do that from that standpoint, but it's also kind of nice now to be able to sit in my, if I don't want to travel, I can sit in my conference room and judge can be in Covington, my client can be in Covington, and I'll be here, and the defense attorney may be in Paducah or Louisville or Lexington, and do the hearing still that way. So.
Well, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people are surprised about. It's the amount of technology that goes into a successful practice of law. You guys are using Zoom now, which is a little new, given how things typically happen throughout the process. But the amount of technology that you guys employ is surprising.
It is. When I started practicing law, legal research online was really new. But we learned it in law school, but we also were primarily taught to do legal research from the books that you see on, anytime you've seen the law firm commercial or whatever, they got all the law books behind the attorneys and the pictures and things, and that's how I learned to do legal research and how I did it for several years, and that changed to where it's done nearly exclusively on online now. In fact, it's been earlier this year or late last year. I was working on a brief, and I had a case that I needed to review, and I knew the case. I just couldn't remember everything about the case as one I'd used before. But when I'm quoting or stating something about a case, I make sure I don't trust my memory on it. So I wanted to go back and relook at the case, and I was on the weekend, and I was here working, and so I started to do the legal research, and the site that I use was down, and it was like it was on a Sunday, and I was wanting to get this brief out on Monday, and I was wanting to finish it up. My part, other than the typing, I wanted to finish up here, and so I had to go back and get the books out again, and it had been a long time since I'd pulled books off the shelf back there, but I'm glad I thought about getting rid of them, and I had not done that, and now I've decided I don't update them, but I'm going to keep them back there in case that occurs ever again. So
good backup plan anyway.
Good backup plan.
Wow.
So, and I wasn't sure if I would remember how to find the stuff in there because I hadn't done it in a long time. But once I opened it up and started doing it, it came back to me pretty quick. Kind of like riding a bicycle.
Just like riding a bicycle. Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, thanks for your time on this episode. I hope that's insightful to people who have always kind of wondered, because there are a lot of shows that show or portray law firms and attorneys on TV, but they're not always as realistic, and you don't really get to see what's in the trenches. Sometimes it's exciting, sometimes it's not as exciting, but there's still a tremendous amount of work. There's some technology involved. There's that ability to interact with people on a human level based on the type of situation you might be dealing with as their attorney, and a lot more that goes into it. And that's really just kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the actual practice of law, and I appreciate you sharing that.
You're very welcome, and if you're planning on going to becoming a lawyer because of Law and Order or any of those other shows, that is nowhere near what it is like to practice law. And my wife gets mad at me every time we watch one of those shows because I will sit there and watch it, and I'll go, "Hey, you could never do that in court," and she'll just say, "Shut up, I'm trying to watch this show."
And the good news is every case is over in an hour.
Exactly. Yeah, the case is over. And it's interesting that they arrest the guy on Friday, and the trial starts the following Thursday, and you're like, that's not going to happen. No, never going to happen anywhere. So,
no, that's fantastic. Yeah. One of the things that you and I have done a lot of work together over the years, and I've sat in here and interviewed some of your clients as they do testimonials about the quality of work and the results that you've generated for them, and the kind words that they're able to share for you. I encourage people, go out to Jeff's Facebook page, go to his YouTube channel, and watch some of those videos, and that'll kind of give you an idea of what it really takes to be successful these days. It's not just about, well, the law says this. It's that ability to connect with people and to go the extra mile, which you so often do. And that I'm not saying that to blow smoke here, Jeff. It's just I've heard client after client after client talk about that. And I really appreciate that aspect of you bringing that to your practice.
Well, and I appreciate the client saying that in someone that's going to be a new practitioner, especially doing what I do for a living. One of the best advices I think I can give them is when you're dealing with, especially your clients, in talking with your clients, is to treat them the golden rule. Treat them the way you would want to be treated. Treat them with the respect that you would want your mother or father treated by someone from that standpoint. And the other, which I was given, actually, my law partner would have agreed with that back when I first practiced, but it was another attorney that I was dealing with early in my career. Actually, was a defense attorney, but it was some really good advice, and I will clean it up a little bit for the podcast, but basically it is the advice was you will lose your reputation one time, and you will never get it back.
Yep.
And so, and remember that, because whenever you're thinking of saying, well, maybe I won't do what I know I should do in this situation or whatever, if you ever let yourself do that, once you lose that reputation as being in the legal field, it will go with you for the rest of your life. And luckily I don't think I have lost my reputation at all from that standpoint. But there's one attorney who just flat out lied to my face in the case, and I found out shortly thereafter that he lied to my face, and I still deal with that attorney now. And every time I deal with that attorney, whatever he tells me, I'm assuming it's not correct until proven otherwise at this point in time. Because he unfortunately he won't never get his reputation back with me because he's already blown it.
Well, ethics and integrity, regardless of what profession you're in, they're vital.
Exactly.
And
that applies to any other profession from that standpoint.
Yep.
But in the legal field, where I'm dealing with the same attorneys over and over and over again on a case, it can make it, and it can come back to affect my clients. To be honest,
very much so.
From that standpoint, so it can be, if an attorney does that, not only it will affect them, the public may never know it, but it would affect my clients, because I'm going to have to spend money on things to prove what I'm saying to the defense attorney is correct in the case. Whereas, in most time you have to prove your case. Don't get me wrong from that standpoint, but the defense attorney, when the defense attorney doubts that I'm shooting them straight on something, that's going to end up costing my client more money in the long run as a general rule.
Right. That makes sense. Jeff, once again, I know you're busy. Thanks for your time very much. And I hope, again, if you're thinking about going to law school, or you have a child or a friend who's thinking about it, feel free to share this episode. I mean, I think there's some powerful insights in there, and maybe some pretty daggone good advice from a guy who's been doing it for quite a while at a pretty high level. So, Jeff, have a great one, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.